At the same time as well, our studies show that the younger generation are increasingly skeptical about IP rights. 40% of our youngsters knowingly acquire, let's say, the counterfeit products, and they don't see anything wrong with that. And there we need to step up on educating them and explaining all the benefits of IP system as such. Good morning. It's first of all great honor for me to be here today at this Berlin Economic Forum. I would like to thank full-heartedly the organizers for bringing together such a distinguished group of speakers and participants to discuss how we can harness innovation for the sustainable future. And I would like to convey as well the best wishes of my Executive Director of the European Union Intellectual Property Office, who was supposed to be here today, but due to unfortunate circumstances, he will not be this time, but he sending his best regards. The European Union Intellectual Property Organization is the institution at the heart of Europe's innovation ecosystem, responsible for protecting intellectual property rights in European Union, like trademarks, designs, geographical indications for the craft and industrial products. And we were established more than 30 years ago in the Spain, Alicante, when we started with 10 employees and colleagues, and now we are one of the biggest EU agencies with more than 1,200 colleagues who are responsible for the areas I mentioned. And behind every thriving economy, every breakthrough technology, and every competitive business lies one critical element, and that is intellectual property. It's often overlooked in discussions on economic growth and global leadership. But as the world evolves, the future of European economic strength depends on how we protect and leverage intellectual property today. The focus of the European Union Intellectual Property Organization is on how we can ensure that Europe remains a leader in innovation, how we can use IP as a driver of growth, and how we can build the system that works for all. Innovation has always been a driving force behind economic and social progress, but innovation doesn't happen in isolation. To thrive, scale, and deliver impact, it needs a strong foundation of support and protection. A well-structured intellectual property system ensures that groundbreaking ideas do not remain just ideas, but become real-world achievements. The power of intellectual property to fuel progress is not recent discovery. For centuries, societies have understood that protecting ideas stimulates economic development, scientific breakthrough, and technological leadership. One of the earliest and most influential recognitions of IP's role can be found, for example, in the United States Constitution, where it is enshrined as a mechanism to promote progress and reward creativity. And from the earliest intellectual property laws to the establishment of modern IP offices, the principle remains unchanged. When ideas are protected, they thrive, and when they thrive, societies prosper. Over the past few decades, we have witnessed a fundamental shift. As innovation has become a driving force of modern economies, the role of intellectual property has expanded alongside it. So has as well the very nature of industry and value creation. Today's economy is increasingly powered by intangible assets, for example as well such as intellectual property. Just a few decades ago, the physical assets formed the basis for every company. It was a physical equipment, physical, let's say, the real estate, machinery, and that was 80% of companies' value. And nowadays, it's totally reverse. It's 80% of intangible assets are the ones of the business value of the companies today. And the global value of intangible assets has grown rapidly, reaching to $62 trillion in 2023. And we see from, let's say, statistic that the real drivers of economical growth for today are patents, trademarks, designs, copyrights, trade secrets, and geographical indications. And they are also the key enablers of cooperation, innovation, export, and financing, shaping the modern economy in the ways that would not have been imaginable just a few decades ago. Let's imagine two entrepreneurs, one launching their business 50 years ago in 1975 and one this year. The differences between their worlds would be staggering. Over the last 50 years, technological achievements has accelerated beyond imagination, from the rise of information technology to the emergence of artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and green technologies. The competitive landscape, access to markets, and the tools available for innovation have evolved drastically. However, in many aspects, our institutions have not kept pace. They have not fully adapted to the changing needs of businesses or provided the necessary support to help innovators to turn their ideas into economical value. And today, the intellectual property is not just a legal framework, it is a cornerstone for shaping industries, empowering entrepreneurs, and driving scientific discovery. And the shift is reflected in the explosive growth as well, if you see on the number of applications across the globe to protect intellectual property rights. In just 3 decades, for example, patent applications have tripled, rising from 1 million in 1995 to 3.5 million in 2023. A similar story can be seen as well for the trademarks and designs. For example, at the EUIPO, we register more than 300,000 applications a year. And today, IP-intensive industries are a fundamental pillar of the global economy. In the European Union alone, they contribute to more than 47% of GDP and account approximately to 1/3 of total employment in the European Union. They also drive the bulk of European exports. Policymakers have increasingly recognized that strong IP frameworks are not just legal safeguards, but are essential drivers of economic success, innovation, and global competitiveness. And the numbers speak for themselves. In 2022, cross-border payments for the use of intellectual property rights have exceeded $1 trillion, and that is growing at an annual rate of 5.5%. To put all this into perspective, that figure is 50 times greater than it was 4 decades ago. And this rapid rise underscores the growing significance of intellectual property in the global economy and highlights how intangible assets like technological knowledge and software have accelerated the cross-border trade of ideas. And it is thus no surprise that Mark Getty famously called intellectual property the oil of the 21st century. Just as oil once powered industrial economy, IP now fuels a knowledge economy, shaping the future of industries, economies, and societies worldwide. However, IP rights are not at all end of themselves. They are part of a broader innovation ecosystem, linking research, development, investment, or market access. And when properly structured, IP frameworks do more than just protect ideas. They create a cycle of innovation and value creation where successful innovations fuel the next wave of technological breakthrough. Europe, however, stands in a defining moment. We now face a dramatically different economical landscape, one shaped by shifting political realities and mounting challenges to the innovation systems for all directions. There are several interwoven forces at the play: the urgent demands of climate change, transition to sustainable energy, explosive growth of artificial intelligence and other modern technologies. And these breakthroughs offer immense opportunities, but they also raise critical questions. How do we protect innovation? How do we commercialize it effectively? And how do we ensure that it remains a driver for sustainable economic growth? At the same time, the geopolitical order is shifting. The era of rules-based institutions and multilateral cooperation is giving way to the world of strengths, strategic interest, and transactional diplomacy dictated outcomes. Defense has become vulnerability. Global competitiveness is intensifying, and economic power is now inseparable from political influence. And the European Union must recognize this reality and act decisively. We can no longer afford complacency. We stand at an inflection point. And the choices we make today will determine how we're going to evolve for the future. A recent report by Mario Draghi, the former president of the European Central Bank, lays out the challenges in quite stark terms. The European Union is falling behind in innovation. While the European Union remains a leader in scientific research, it struggles to convert that knowledge into globally competitive business. The gap between the discovery and commercialization is growing, and unless we close it, Europe will continue to lose ground in the industries that will define the future. And the data is clear. For example, if you look as well on the patent applications, then in 2021, Europe accounted just for 17% of global patent applications. If you compare that to United States, which amounted to 21%, or China, which amounted to 25%. European companies invest 270 billion less in research and innovation than the US counterparts do. Meanwhile, China has surged in the key emerging fields like artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and advanced manufacturing, overtaking Europe not only in patent volume, but also in ability to bring these technologies to the market. At the same time, Europe's startups, faced with regulatory barriers, fragmented financing, are increasingly looking to scale abroad. Many are relocating to the United States, where they find the capital, infrastructure, or market conditions they need to grow. Without strategic reforms to foster disruptive innovation and improve intellectual property commercialization, the EU risks losing its competitive edge in high-tech industries. And the effect of this innovation gap is already visible. If you look at for example, 50 most valuable companies today, then you will find that only 6 are European. And if you look as well, for example, especially in the technological sector, you will see that only 4 European companies are in top 50 of the global ranking. And Draghi warns of this innovation gap that threatens Europeans' position for the global economical leadership. As Draghi has put it aptly, if Europe cannot become more productive, we will be forced to choose. We will not be able to finance our social model. We will need to reduce some, if not all, of our ambitions, and it is an existential challenge for us. But this is not just an economical issue. Growth is fundamental to Europe's security. As the global order shifts, economical strengths will be as crucial as military strengths. While cooperation remains a pillar of Europe's approach, we must acknowledge that others no longer play by the same rules. And funding our defense, securing our energy independence, and ensuring Europe remains a strong and sovereign power demand strong economical growth. And then growth will not come from traditional industries alone. It must be driven by cutting-edge innovation, by breakthroughs that create entire new markets, by Europe that leads in technology. And Europe does not lack talent at all, ideas or ambitions to that matter. We are the home to some of the world's brightest minds, the most advanced research institutions and thriving startup ecosystem. But talents and ideas often are not enough. The challenge lies in scaling them, in transforming them into global success stories, in ensuring that European innovation does not simply serve as raw material for value creation elsewhere. And we must adapt. We must evolve, supporting European businesses and their efforts to innovate, commercialize, and compete. The United States economy is half bigger than EU's. If you compare, for example, 29 trillion euros to compared to 19. And for the Europe to keep up, we must enhance our competitiveness through innovation-driven economical growth. Unlike other global powers, in Europe we cannot rely on vast natural resources. Our strength lies elsewhere. Our greatest asset is our intellectual capacity, and we must harness it to drive the next wave of economical expansion. And at the heart of this transformation lies intellectual property, the key to unlocking Europe's economical potential. And the European Union Intellectual Property Office has an important role to play in making that happen. In this rapidly evolving, interconnected, and interdependent world, the challenges are polarization and technological progress have become increasingly complex. And for that we need a well-functioning IP system. And the deeper a business integrates intellectual property into its operation, the greater its competitive advantage becomes. Yet, too few European businesses take full use of these advantages. For example, only 9% of European small and medium-sized companies has any of protected IP rights, be it trademarks, designs, or the patents. As well, only our SMEs in Europe survive on average 6 years, although they form the backbone of European economy while being 99% of all the companies in Europe. And this is despite our research showing that SMEs that own intellectual property rights, trademark, design, or patent, generate much more revenue per employee, and they pay much higher wages for their employees. And we know that as well they are, let's say, much easier to attract venture capital and scale successfully. And this is a missed opportunity. And supporting small and medium-sized companies should be a priority. And at the EUIPO, we are taking concrete actions in that regard. Together with European Commission, we have established SME Fund, which helps European companies, let's say, to receive the funding to protect their IP rights. And within the last 3 years, we have managed to help more than 100,000 SMEs in Europe. We must also ensure that IP system is truly inclusive. And today, significant disparities remain in access and use of intellectual property. Just to name the few, for example, gender gap. If we look at the studies, only 24% of design applications in Europe are submitted by women designers. If you look at the patent area, only 13% of all European patents submitted in European Patent Organization are submitted by women inventors. And the gap is staggering. If we believe that in our society we are roughly half and half, we see that there is a lot of untapped potential. At the same time as well, our studies show that the younger generation are increasingly skeptical about IP rights. 40% of our youngsters knowingly acquire, let's say, the counterfeit products, and they don't see anything wrong with that. And there we need to step up on educating them and explaining all the benefits of IP system as such. And these figures are not just statistics. They represent lost potential in our mind. Europe cannot afford to exclude half of its talent pool from the innovative economy. Ensuring broad and equitable participation in IP system will be critical to unlock Europe's full innovative potential. Beyond protection, businesses must be able to leverage their IP for success. That requires as well developing standardized approach for valuing intangible assets, enabling businesses to use their IP as collateral for financing, and IP-backed finance must be fully integrated. For example, nowadays, if you look, there are no uniform rules in European Union how you can put your intangible assets on your, let's say, the tax sheet of your company. There are no uniform methodology how you can evaluate intangible asset and use that, for example, to acquire financing. And those are the areas where we need to look into that. Europe needs as well the workforce that is ready for this new reality. We must invest in high-tech skills, intellectual property expertise, and entrepreneurial knowledge. And this is not only about creating more jobs. It is about creating better jobs, jobs that will keep Europe competitive, jobs that will allow businesses to expand beyond their local economies and thrive on a more global stage. The next generation of entrepreneurs, researchers, and investors must be equipped with these skills to use intellectual property as a tool for their growth and strategical advantage. A knowledge-based economy depends on people who not only innovate, but also understand how to protect, manage, and commercialize their ideas. While innovation knows no borders, IP systems remain largely national or regional. As the competition intensifies and technology rapidly reshapes industries, Europe must take a lead in sharing the future of IP policy and enforcement. A strong, flexible IP framework can facilitate technology transfer, to developing nations, ensuring that innovation drives sustainable growth beyond Europe's borders. And at the time when some regions turn inwards, restricting trade and innovation flows, Europe must remain open, competitive, and committed to fair global marketplace. By championing a level of playing field for companies, the EU can reinforce its position as a global leader in knowledge economy. Just to let you know that as well at the EUIPO, we on behalf of European Commission are implementing a number of EU-funded projects across the globe. We cooperate meaningfully with more than 100 countries, and we are represented, let's say, with these programs helping building local knowledge, capacity, as well adopting laws in many of the IP areas. However, global leadership begins at home. To maintain Europe's competitive edge, we must continue to strengthen our own innovation ecosystem, ensuring that businesses, entrepreneurs, and researchers can fully capitalize on the value of intellectual property. And the European Union Intellectual Property Organization Strategic Plan 2030, which was adopted last year, provides the roadmap of these efforts, setting clearly the framework for our work in the years ahead. In closing, it is important to keep in mind that innovation has always been the foundation of Europe's prosperity. But to remain competitive in a rapidly evolving world, we must ensure that intellectual property continues to drive progress, investment, and economic growth. Today, we have explored how IP fuels innovation, strengthens businesses, and secures a position in the global economy. We have also acknowledged the challenges ahead, ensuring that our IP system is fair, accessible, adaptable to new challenges. Europe has never been a continent that waits for change. We shape it, we lead it, and today, as we face new challenges, the only way forward is innovate our way out. We should be more united, more committed. Protecting innovation is not just an economical imperative. It is a necessity for a sustainable future. Thank you.
Thank you very much.